The first time the words appeared, I thought someone in the auditorium had turned on the subtitles by accident. Street. Caledon Academy loved gadgets the way other schools love trophies. We had drones filming pep rallies, holograms in the library, and a security system that could identify your gate from 50 meters away. So, when I stepped onto the stage for student council candidate night, and a thin ribbon of text flickered at the edge of my vision, live feed connected, I didn't panic. I smiled like the daughter of a shipping magnate was supposed to smile, adjusted my blazer that probably cost more than the microphone, and waited for the tech team to fix it. Instead, the ribbon multiplied, comments stacked in translucent layers, buoyant as soap bubbles, drifting between my eyes and the audience like a private storm. Here she comes, the villainess in Navy. Watch her pretend she's humble. She's going to humiliate the scholarship transfer again, right? Rich girl arc, same as always. If she doesn't cause trouble, how will Golden Boy regret it later? My mouth kept moving my speech about community service, mental health resources, and a new policy for anonymous reporting, while my brain went ice cold. Villainous, Golden Boy, regret, later. I blinked, hard, and the text didn't vanish. In the third row, Finn Arkwright lifted his hand in a lazy wave. The room's lights caught his smile and turned it into a weapon. People loved Finn because he looked like the kind of person who apologized even when he won. Finn was also, if you believed the brochures, my future fiancé. Our families had been close since before I learned to braid my hair. He met my gaze, and the comments surged. There, the male lead. He'll be warm to the poor girl and cold to Alara. Classic. Someone clipped the moment he chooses Mira over Alara. We need the heartbreak montage. Mira Lane was sitting 3 seats from Finn, hands folded so tightly her knuckles were pale, a scholarship badge pinned on her lapel like a target. She looked up when the crowd applauded me, and for a second I saw myself reflected in her eyes, an enemy she hadn't met yet. And the feed agreed. Villainess is about to do it. She'll accuse Mira of plagiarism. She always does. I almost laughed, because the line was wrong in the most insulting way. I'd never accused anyone of plagiarism in my life. I barely cared about grades. I cared about outcomes. Contracts signed, charities funded, headlines managed. But the feed didn't care about who I was. It cared about who it wanted me to be. The applause faded. The moderator reached for my hand to guide me off stage, and my father's voice echoed in my head. Control the narrative before it controls you. I stepped down, accepted the flowers, and kept my smile. Inside, something clicked like a lock, giving way. If the world had decided I was a villain in someone else's story, then fine. I would read the script, and then I would rewrite it. For the next 48 hours, the feed followed me everywhere, popping into existence when I least expected it. Above my cereal bowl in the dining hall, along the edge of my mirror when I brushed my teeth, hovering over the fountain as I crossed the quad. Sometimes it was a trickle, 2 or 3 snide lines. Sometimes it was a flood that made it hard to see. It always sounded like a crowd that thought it was invisible. She's checking her phone again. That's her villain move, collecting evidence. Don't flatter her. She's planning sabotage. Wait, why isn't she doing anything? Plot hole. The strangest part was that the comments weren't random. They referenced events that hadn't happened yet with the confidence of people who had watched them. When I opened my locker, a line appeared. Cue the necklace. She'll plant it in Mira's bag in 3, 2. I froze. A silver pendant lay on the top shelf, glinting like bait. Not mine. Not anything I recognized. My first instinct was to call security. My second instinct, sharper, was to look around and see who was watching. Finn lounged at the end of the hallway, laughing with his friends as if he'd never seen a conspiracy in his life. Mira was at the water fountain, head down, trying to become invisible, and leaning against the window, half in shadow, was Jay Rowan, the quiet kid who sat in the back row of advanced economics and never joined conversations. People said he was scholarship, the way they said dirt, like it was something that got under your nails. Jay's gaze met mine for a heartbeat, calm and assessing, and the feed jittered. Oh, the second male lead is here. He'll suffer quietly while she chases Finn. Back row guy, he's just the future billionaire. Obviously. He's too poor to matter yet. The feed's logic was a mess, but it had one habit that felt useful. It predicted the next beat with terrible enthusiasm. I reached into my locker, took the strange pendant by its chain, and held it up. The comments screamed, "She's doing it! Here comes the frame! Mira, run!" I walked straight past Mira, past Finn, past the whole hallway of watching eyes, and dropped the pendant into the lost and found box under the counselor's door. Then I turned around and spoke, loud enough for anyone to hear. If someone's missing a pendant, it's in lost and found, and if someone's trying to start rumors, at least pick something less obvious. Silence rippled. Finn's smile faltered. Mira's eyes widened. Jay's mouth twitched, as if he'd almost smiled. The feed stuttered, lines overlapping. "What? That's not the scene. She's deviating. Is this allowed? Villainess bugged?" I walked away before my pulse could betray me. In the bathroom mirror, a new line appeared, smaller and almost curious. "If she won't play the villain, what happens to the story?" I leaned closer to my reflection. "It happens to me," I whispered. "I happen." Street. Kaladin had two kinds of power. The kind you earned with grades and grit, and the kind you inherited with a last name that opened doors like magic. I'd been born into the second kind, which meant people assumed I'd never want the first. They were wrong. I liked winning. I just preferred games where the board wasn't made of homework. But now the feed had turned my life into a board anyway, and it wasn't subtle about the rules. It wanted Finn to be the sun, Mira to be the wounded moon, and me to be the eclipse that made Finn realize how bright Mira was. A neat little morality play. The rich girl learns humility by losing everything. The poor girl rises because she was pure all along. Finn regrets, chases, redeems himself. Everyone claps. I could almost hear the narrator. The problem was that the story had already begun, and Street Kaladin adored stories. At lunch, girls leaned toward Mira with practiced warmth, saying things like, "If you need notes, just ask," as if they hadn't ignored every scholarship kid before her. Boys offered to carry her tray. Teachers called on her and praised her answers with a brightness that felt staged. The feed cheered every time she flinched. Yes, make her sympathetic. Look at Finn noticing her. Alara will be jealous in 10 minutes. I watched the attention settle on Mira like snow, soft and suffocating. She didn't know how to wear it. Finn, of course, wore his role like he'd been born into it because he had. He made a point of sitting near Mira, laughing at her jokes, asking about her commute, praising her resilience. And every time he did, he glanced at me, not with affection, but with the smug satisfaction of a person performing for an invisible audience. The feed adored him for it. My stomach turned. I'd been close to Finn once. In that way children are close when adults decide their families should merge. We'd built sandcastles on summer estates and competed at chess and pretended the future was a thing you could schedule like a yacht. But somewhere along the line, Finn learned a specific pleasure. The pleasure of being seen as good. He didn't need to be kind. He needed to be perceived as kind. The feed made that perception sharper, as if the world's eyes were a lens he could adjust. I decided to test the feed. In advanced economics, the teacher asked for volunteers to present. The feed flashed. Mira will raise her hand. Finn will offer to partner. Alara will sabotage the slide deck. I raised my hand. The room went still. Finn's brows lifted. Mira's hand hesitated halfway up and dropped. The feed filled with static. Then, huh? I walked to the front and said, "I'll present alone." The teacher blinked, then nodded, pleased. I delivered a clean analysis on market signaling and reputation economics, using Finn's favorite charity gala as an example of how generosity could be leveraged into social capital. As I spoke, I watched Finn's smile tighten. Reputation economics. Signal. Perception. The feed's text thinned. Lines less confident. She's using her brain? But Villainess doesn't study. This is off-genre. When I finished, the teacher praised me. A few students clapped. Finn clapped too, but his eyes were sharp. In the back row, Jay Rowan leaned forward, chin on hand, watching me like I'd just moved a chess piece in a game only he understood. After class, he approached me in the hallway. Up close, I noticed details I'd ignored before. Ink on his knuckles, a faint scar on his thumb, the way his uniform fit like it had been altered by someone who knew fabric. He didn't smile. "You can see it," he said softly. "The feed." My heart thudded. "You can too?" He shook his head. "I can't see it, but I can see you reacting to things that haven't happened yet." He paused, then added, "And I can see the cameras." I followed his gaze. In the ceiling corner, A small lens glinted newer than the others, angled oddly. Street Caledon had cameras, yes, but this one felt different, like it was watching for a reaction, not a rule violation. Jay's voice dropped. If you want to know what's real, stop looking at the comments and start looking at what makes them appear. I swallowed. Why are you helping me? He met my eyes. Because the feed is a machine. And machines don't write stories for free. That night I lay in my room while the Academy's lake wind rattled the window. My suite was absurd. A sitting area, a private bathroom with gold fixtures, a bed the size of a small boat. I'd loved it when I was younger. Now it felt like a stage. The feed floated above my ceiling like glow-in-the-dark graffiti. She's alone. Cue the sad monologue. Villainess will cry about Finn. Then she'll vow revenge. I sat up. No, I said aloud. The feed paused, as if listening. I'm going to do something you hate, I told it. I'm going to ask questions. I opened my laptop and searched for Street Caledon live feed comments overlay. Nothing. I searched for AR comments app. I found plenty of social platforms, but none that matched what I saw. I searched for live feed connected, in quotes. Still nothing. The feed chimed, almost mocking. She thinks she can Google fate. I closed the laptop and went analog. In my desk drawer was the student handbook. I flipped through sections I'd never read. Code of conduct, privacy policy, technology use. Buried in the fine print of the Augmented Reality Learning Initiative, I found a clause about opt-in interactive overlays for pilot programs. Pilot, opt-in, interactive. My finger traced the words. Street Caledon was running an experiment. The feed wasn't magic. It was software probably tied to the Academy's AR projectors, contact lenses, or the school's network. And if it was software, it had an origin. I messaged Jay. How do I find what triggers it? He replied a minute later. Walk the halls after curfew. If security catches you, you didn't hear it from me. I stared at the message, then at the feed, which had grown quiet. You're nervous, I murmured. I slipped on a hoodie, tucked my hair into a cap, and left my suite. The hallway was dim, lit by emergency strips. My footsteps were swallowed by carpet. The feed flickered faintly as I passed certain doors. In front of the media lab, it brightened. Careful. This is where the producers live. Producers. That word hit like a slap. I paused by the lab's glass wall. Inside, screens glowed with dashboards and graphs. A headset lay on a table. A whiteboard was covered with flowcharts labeled ARC, narrative beats, emotional response. I leaned closer, heart racing. On one screen, I saw a map of the campus with dots moving students. On another, a live video feed of the hallway I stood in, my own figure in a hoodie framed neatly. So Jay was right. There were cameras watching for more than security. The feed fluttered. If she sees the board, the story ends. Don't let her. A door clicked. I ducked behind a pillar as two adults walked into the lab. Dr. Heller, Street Caledon's head of innovation, and someone I recognized from glossy magazines, Mr. Arkwright, Finn's father. Finn's father spoke like he owned the air. Engagement is down, he said. The audience wants conflict. You promised a redemption arc. If Alara won't play, we'll adjust the incentives. Dr. Heller's voice was eager. We can increase the overlay prompts. Push her toward the jealousy beat. We've already seeded props. The pendant was an easy test. Seeded props. My stomach clenched. Mr. Arkwright continued. And Mira is perfect. Her background scores high on empathy response. Pair her with Finn. Let the public. He stopped, frowning at a third screen. Who's in the hallway? Dr. Heller tapped keys. Probably security. Mr. Arkwright's gaze sharpened. No, that's Alara. She's off schedule. A cold wave washed over me. The feed. Frantic now. Run. I didn't run. Running would confirm guilt. I stepped out from behind the pillar, lifted my chin, and walked straight to the lab door. Before they could react, I pulled the handle. Locked. Of course. I smiled at the glass. Good evening, I called. Loud enough to carry. I couldn't sleep. Something about being someone else's experiment keeps me awake. Dr. Heller's face went pale. Mr. Arkwright's expression didn't change. He approached the glass slowly, like a predator approaching a cage. Alara, he said, almost kindly. You're tired. Go back to bed. The feed flashed. He's the final boss. I met his eyes. I will, I said. But first I want to know the terms of your contract. Are you selling my humiliation per episode or per breakdown? Mr. Arkwright's smile sharpened. You misunderstand, he said. No one is forcing you. It's opt-in. I laughed once. Opt-in? When? At age 7, when you handed me a bracelet and said it meant I belonged to Finn? At 12, when my parents signed an education partnership with your foundation? At 15, when you installed lenses in our orientation kits and called them learning tools? Dr. Heller flinched. Mr. Arkwright's eyes narrowed by a fraction. Careful, he said. Stories are fragile. Break one, and you might not like what replaces it. I leaned closer to the glass until my breath fogged it. Then you should be careful, I whispered back. Because I'm done being fragile. I walked away before the feed could tell me to. Behind me, mister. Arkwright's voice followed, calm and dangerous. You can't win against an audience. Jay's message buzzed in my pocket as if timed. The audience isn't the enemy. The algorithm is. Find the server room. The next day, the feed tried harder. It showed up with bigger fonts, brighter colors, emotional little sound cues. It offered helpful suggestions, like a friend with knives. When Finn complimented Mira's essay in the hallway, the feed popped. Do the eye roll now. Jealousy beat. When Mira dropped her books, the feed urged. Kick the papers. Establish cruelty. When a teacher praised Mira, the feed sang, storm out. Make it about you. I did none of it. I became bland on purpose. I smiled at Mira. I thanked teachers. I nodded at Finn with the politeness you give a stranger on an elevator. The feed grew irritated. She's boring. Boring villainess. Refund. Where's the tantrum? She's sabotaging the plot. Finn cornered me near the gym, his voice low and practiced. What are you doing? He asked. You're embarrassing yourself. By being polite? I replied. He leaned in, eyes bright with righteous frustration. By pretending you're above it. People like you don't change. Not unless they lose. The feed cheered his line. Yes, he said the thing. I stared at him and realized something. Finn could see the effect of the feed even if he couldn't see the words. He knew which scenes the world wanted. He knew how to deliver them. Do you know? I asked suddenly. About the lab? Finn's smile didn't falter, but his pupils tightened. What lab? I nodded slowly. You do. I stepped back. Tell your father I'm not available for season 2. Finn's jaw tightened. Alara, stop acting like a victim. You've had everything. I tilted my head. Everything? Or everything that looked good on camera? For a second, Finn's mask slipped, and I saw anger like a stain. Then he softened, voice honeyed. You're stressed. Let's talk tonight. Dinner in the Founders Hall. Just us. The feed exploded. Date scene. He'll apologize. She'll melt. Then Mira will walk in and misunderstand. We love misunderstandings. I smiled. Sure, I said. Dinner. Finn looked relieved, as if he'd pulled me back into my assigned lane. He didn't see me glance at Jay across the courtyard. Jay had been waiting by the fountain, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. When Finn left, Jay approached. Server room is under Founders Hall, he murmured. Restricted. Badge access. I have badge access, I said. At least my badge thinks I do. Jay's mouth twitched. Your badge thinks a lot of things. The system tells it what to believe. Can you get in? I asked. He shook his head. Not alone. But you can, if you're willing to get your hands dirty. I was born with my hands dirty, I said. They just taught me to wear gloves. That evening, I dressed for dinner in a simple black dress, hair pinned back, no jewelry. The feed whined. Where's the necklace? Where's the rich girl sparkle? I ignored it. Founders Hall glowed with chandeliers and oil paintings of donors. Finn waited at the long table, a single rose beside his plate. He stood when I entered, all charm. You look beautiful, he said. The feed sighed. Romance. I sat. Thank you, I replied. You look like a brochure. Finn laughed, thinking I was flirting. We ate in silence for 2 minutes, the kind of silence that expects someone to break first. Finn finally sighed dramatically. Alara, he began. I know things have been weird. Mira, don't, I interrupted. Finn blinked. I set down my fork and leaned forward. I'm going to ask you a question. I said. And I want the truth. Are you in love with Mira? Or are you in love with being seen as the guy who saves her? Finn's smile tightened. That's not fair, he said. She's good. She's real. She's not like me, I finished, scripted. The feed clapped. Drama! Finn's eyes flashed. You want to know the truth? He hissed. Fine. I don't have to be in love with her. The audience is. And if the audience wants me to look at her like she's the only thing that matters, then I will. Because that's how you become unstoppable. My skin went cold. You said audience? I whispered. Finn's face betrayed him for half a second. He recovered, smoothing his napkin. I mean people. Everyone. They're watching. They always have. He leaned in, voice low. You know that, Alara. You've been watched your whole life. The difference is, I learned how to use it. I stood. My chair scraped softly against marble. Enjoy your dinner, I said. I'm going to the restroom. The feed giggled. Here comes the misunderstanding with Mira. I walked past the restroom, down the side corridor, to the staff door Jay had shown me earlier. My badge beeped green. I slipped through. The hallway beyond smelled of dust and humming electricity. The feed dimmed, as if the signal weakened. Good. I descended a staircase to the basement, my heels quiet on concrete. A door marked authorized personnel only loomed ahead. Another beep. Green. Inside, rows of servers blinked like constellations trapped in metal cages. A cooling system breathed in steady sighs. In the center of the room was a workstation, with a live dashboard, emotional heat map, engagement score, narrative status. My name was a node on the graph. Alara Voss Villain arc deviation 68%. Finn Arkwright was another. Finn redemption arc on track. Mira heroine arc sensitivity high. Jay's name was nowhere. Of course it wasn't. Side characters were invisible until they weren't. I heard footsteps behind me and spun. Jay stood in the doorway, breath steady. You got in, he said. You followed me. I replied. I said you couldn't do it alone, he said. He stepped closer, eyes scanning the screens with a familiarity that made my suspicion flare. How do you know what you're looking at? I demanded. Jay hesitated, then said, Because I built a piece of it. The feed, barely visible here, sputtered like a dying light. Plot twist. I stared. You're with them? Jay shook his head once, sharp. I was. 2 years ago. My mother cleaned Dr. Heller's house. I got in through a scholarship program tied to their tech. They paid for my tuition if I coded. I thought it was just sentiment analysis. I didn't know they were turning it into a script. He swallowed. When I realized, I tried to quit. They threatened to pull my scholarship. Then they offered me something else. The promise that if I stayed quiet, they'd let me win later. That's how the system works. It sells hope. I stared at the server lights. Hope is currency. So why help me now? I asked. Jay's gaze was steady. Because you're the first person who didn't do what the feed told you, he said. And if you can break your arc, it means the machine isn't absolute. He nodded toward the workstation. We can crash it. But if we do, they'll lose control, and they'll do something desperate. My pulse pounded. Like what? Jay's expression darkened. They'll pick a new villain. We didn't crash it that night. Not yet. Jay said the system had redundancies, off-site backups, emergency scripts, manual overrides. If we pulled the plug without a plan, the feed would reboot uglier, with higher stakes. You don't dismantle a machine by kicking it, he said. You dismantle it by making it confess. So we copied logs. We downloaded configuration files. We found folders labeled ARC templates. Villainess, reform, heroine, suffer, male, lead, regret. Inside were trigger conditions and suggested lines, like a menu of human reactions. I felt nauseous reading them. One file was titled Jewelry, Planting. Another was Public, Humiliation, At, Gala. Another was Suicide, Scare, Rooftop. The feed had been predicting tragedy with the casual hunger of spectators. And here it was, planned in plain text. They built this, I whispered. They planned it. Jay's jaw clenched. They call it narrative optimization. He slid a flash drive into his pocket. We need leverage. We need a public breach. Something that forces them to admit it exists. I thought of Finn's father, of Dr. Heller's eager smile. I thought of my parents, who had signed papers without reading the sharp edges. They won't admit it, I said. Not unless they think they can control the confession too. Jay's eyes lifted to mine. Then we make the confession uncontrollable. We climbed back to the main hall. The feed returned as soon as we hit the chandelier glow, as if happy to have its signal back. It flooded my vision with frantic lines. Where did she go? Finn is waiting. Mira is about to walk in. I ignored it. I walked into the dining room and found Finn standing, his patience fraying. Mira stood beside him, looking like she'd been called into a scene without rehearsing. Elara, Finn said, voice tight. Mira wanted to apologize. The feed cooed. Aw, the heroine is humble. Mira's eyes darted to mine. I'm sorry, she said quickly. If I took anything that was yours, attention, space, I didn't mean to. I just want to study. My throat tightened. Mira wasn't acting. She didn't know the machine. She only knew the pressure. The feed shoved a line forward like a cue card. Say something cruel. Send her away. I took a breath and spoke softly instead. Mira, I said, you don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself a life that isn't written by strangers. Mira blinked, confused. Finn scoffed. What does that even mean? I smiled, sharp. It means you're not the only one who's being used, I said. Finn's face hardened. Stop, he warned. You're making things weird. I leaned in. They're already weird, I said. You just like them when they're weird for someone else. The feed screamed, lines stacking so fast they blurred. This isn't the scene. Contain. Finn's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and his face changed. For a second, I saw fear. My father wants to see you, he said stiffly. Now. Tell him I'm busy, I replied. Finn's jaw tightened. You don't get to be busy, he snapped. The words tasted like a confession. Mira flinched. Jay appeared behind me, silent as a shadow. Finn's gaze flicked to him, and something like recognition flashed. Rowan, Finn said, voice cold. Still lurking. Jay didn't respond. He only looked at Finn with a calm that made Finn's bravado falter. I stepped back, pretending I'd spilled water on my dress. Excuse me, I said to Mira, gentle. I'll be right back. I pulled Jay into the corridor. We need Mira, I whispered. She's the heroine. If she speaks, people will listen. Jay's expression was grim. And if she speaks, the machine will punish her. It punishes anyone who threatens engagement. My stomach twisted. Then we protect her, I said, like a real story, not a scripted one. The next day, the feed targeted Mira. It started small. Whispers that she'd cheated on a quiz. Rumors that she'd lied about her background. The comments swarmed her like flies. Heroine is fake. Expose her. Finn deserves better. I watched Mira's shoulders stiffen under the weight of eyes. She tried to smile through it, but her hands trembled when she wrote. I found her in the library, alone, surrounded by books like armor. Are you okay? I asked. Mira looked up, eyes red-rimmed. Why are people doing this? She whispered. I didn't do anything. I sat across from her, lowered my voice. Because something is making them, I said. Mira stared. What? I hesitated. If I told her, she might think I was crazy. But the feed was already making her crazy with suspicion. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot one of the server logs Jay had captured, with her name labeled Heroine Arc. Mira's face went white. This is me? She breathed. They planned me? I nodded. They planned all of us, I said. They planned you as a symbol. They planned Finn as a savior. They planned me as your enemy. And they planned an audience to cheer. Mira's eyes filled. I just wanted a scholarship, she whispered. I just wanted a chance. I reached across the table, touched her hand lightly. Then take it, I said. But take it for you, not for them. Mira's lips trembled. What do we do? She asked. The feed hissed faintly in my peripheral vision. Do not recruit heroine. I smiled at the invisible threat. We make them show their faces, I said. We make the feed go public. Street. Caledon's biggest event of the year was the Founders' Gala, an ocean of tuxedos and glittering gowns, a parade of donors who believed their money made them moral. Cameras would be everywhere, The feed would be hungry. According to the ARC templates, the gala was where the villainess was supposed to break. I would be publicly humiliated. My family would lose influence. Finn would realize Mira was the only one who understood him. The file even had suggested set pieces. A spilled drink, a ripped dress, a staged accusation of theft. I read it 3 times until my anger turned cold and clear. They want drama, I told Jay and Mira in a whisper session behind the theater curtains. We'll give it to them. Jay frowned. Not the kind they can monetize. Exactly, I said. We built our plan like a heist. Mira would do what she did best, disappear into the background until it mattered. She'd access the gala's livestream control booth easy, because scholarship kids were always asked to help. Jay would exploit a backdoor he'd left in the overlay system during his coding days. Not to crash it, but to reroute it. And I, Elara Voss, the so-called villainess, would stand on the brightest stage and invite the audience to watch the real show. You'll get punished, Mira whispered, voice shaking. Your parents, your reputation, I shrugged. I'm already punished, I said. I'm punished every time people assume they know me, because my last name is famous. Jay's gaze held mine. If we do this, he said, there's no going back. I smiled, thin. Good, I replied. I'm tired of going back. The day of the gala, the feed was louder than ever. It gave me countdowns. It showed me highlights of my supposed future humiliation. It taunted me with comments like, she thinks she can outsmart the narrative. I dressed anyway. I chose a gown the color of midnight ink. Simple lines, no sparkle. A kind of elegance that didn't beg for approval. My mother watched me in the mirror, her expression careful. You're quiet, she said. I met her eyes. Would you still love me if the world hated me? I asked softly. She blinked, startled. Then she reached out and smoothed my hair. Elara, she said, the world has always had an opinion. That's why we learned to be louder than it. I almost told her everything. I almost showed her the logs. But I remembered Mr. Arkwright's warning. Stories are fragile. And I wasn't sure whose story my mother believed she lived in. So I nodded and left. Founders Hall was transformed into a cathedral of wealth. Strings of lights hung like constellations. A live band played music that sounded like champagne. Finn greeted donors with perfect ease, his smile a practiced blessing. He offered me his arm. For appearances, he murmured. The feed swooned. Couple shot. I took his arm and leaned close, sweet as poison. Smile, I whispered. The cameras love you. Finn's eyes flicked, wary. What are you planning? He hissed under his breath. I smiled wider. A story, I whispered back. Just not yours. As we moved through the crowd, I saw Mira in a simple black dress, hair pinned up, wearing the uniform of invisibility. She carried a tray of glasses, her gaze down, her posture careful. A donor brushed past her without looking, and the feed chuckled. Heroine suffering. Good. Jay stood by a pillar, dressed in a borrowed suit that fit him better than it should. He looked like he belonged in any room and none. The feed barely mentioned him. Side characters didn't get screen time unless they interfered. When the time came for speeches, the headmaster took the stage and welcomed everyone. The feed rolled. Now, humiliation scene in 12 minutes. Finn's father sat in the front row, hands folded, expression serene. Dr. Heller hovered near the side, eyes gleaming like a man about to launch a product. I walked onto the stage when my name was called, accepting the microphone with calm hands. The feed erupted in my vision. Villainous speech. She'll say something arrogant, then get booed. Finn will look disappointed. Mira will cry prettily. I cleared my throat. Good evening, I began. Thank you for supporting Street Kaladin's mission, to educate leaders. Polite applause. Finn smiled. His father watched, unreadable. I continued. Voice steady. Tonight I want to talk about leadership, I said. Not the kind that looks good in photos. The kind that happens when no one is supposed to be watching. The feed flickered, confused. Off script? I took a breath. Street, Kaladin is proud of its technology, I said. We call ourselves innovative. We call ourselves ethical. We love words like future and impact. I paused. So I have a question. What happens when we use technology to script people? Silence rippled. Finn's smile froze. Mr. Arkwright's eyes narrowed. Dr. Heller stiffened. I raised my free hand, palm out. If you've been seeing something tonight, text, comments, prompts, you're not alone, I said. A gasp ran through the crowd. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. The feed screamed in my vision. Cut her mic. I felt the microphone flicker, as if someone tried. But Jay's back door held. My voice stayed. This school has been running a pilot program, I said. An augmented reality overlay designed to optimize narratives, to push students into roles, to collect engagement like it's morality. The feed flashed red. Emergency. I kept going. They called it opt-in, I said. But consent without understanding is not consent. They seeded props. They tracked emotional responses. They wrote scripts for humiliation, for romance, for despair. I didn't look at Mira. I didn't need to. I could feel her courage trembling like a wire. If you don't believe me, I said, watch the screen. Mira, in the control booth, switched the projector feed. The massive display behind me flickered from gala photos to the server dashboard. Alara Vos Villain arc, Mira Lane heroine arc, Finn Arkwright redemption arc, trigger lists, suggested lines, planned scenes. The room erupted into chaos. People shouted. Donors stood. Finn surged to his feet, face white with fury. Mr. Arkwright rose slowly, his calm finally cracking. Dr. Heller lunged toward the side door, shouting for security. The feed in my vision went insane. Text multiplying until it became a wall. Stop, stop, stop. Audience lost. Shut down. A hand grabbed my arm. Finn's. What have you done? He hissed, voice shaking. You're destroying everything. I met his eyes. No, I said quietly. I'm destroying what you built on other people's lives. Finn's grip tightened. You'll regret this, he snapped. The feed tried to hijack my eyes one last time. Villainess falls. I smiled, breath steady, and said into the microphone, I'm not the villain. I'm the witness. Security rushed the stage. A donor shouted about lawsuits. Someone started filming with their phone, as if desperate to own the chaos. Mira's voice, trembling but clear, came through the speakers from the booth. The overlay is real. They told me my suffering would inspire people. I didn't agree. Her words pierced the room like glass. People stopped shouting for a second, stunned by her rawness. Jay slipped through the crowd toward the side exit, his face calm. He looked up at me once and nodded, the plan's last step. Get out before they could bury the evidence. I stepped off the stage as security grabbed for the microphone. Finn's father strode forward, voice like steel. Alara, he called, this is not over. I turned, met his gaze, and said softly, it's over the moment people stop paying you to hurt children. Then I walked away, my heels steady on marble, while behind me the feed died mid-scream, cutting out like a light switched off. They tried to contain it, of course. By midnight, Street, Caledon's official channels posted a statement. Technical glitch during an AR demonstration. By morning, lawyers had drafted threats. My father's phone rang until it overheated. My mother paced with a glass of water she never drank. Finn's family called ours with voices coated in honey and venom. I sat at the kitchen island and watched my life be negotiated. For once, the feed was gone. The silence should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like the moment after thunder, when you realize you're still standing in the rain. Did you do this? My father asked, voice low. I met his eyes. Yes, I said. I did. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he exhaled. They will come for you, he said. They'll paint you as unstable. They'll say you fabricated it. They can try, I replied. My mother's hands trembled. Alara, she whispered. Why didn't you tell us? I swallowed. Because I didn't know if you would believe me, I admitted, or if you would tell me to be quiet for the sake of peace. My father's jaw tightened. Peace, he repeated, bitter, is what people call surrender when they're tired. He looked away, then back. Show me what you have. I handed him the flash drive Jay had given me, containing the logs. My father's eyes sharpened as he read. He scrolled, jaw tightening, as the machine's cruelty unfolded line by line. My mother covered her mouth. They planned this, she whispered, voice breaking. They planned you to be destroyed. And Mira to be broken, I said, and Finn to be the hero. and everyone to clap. My father's hands stilled. "We're not going to clap," he said. "We're going to sue." For the first time in days, I felt something like warmth. Not because my father was defending me, he always defended his investments, but because he was furious at being tricked. The machine had underestimated one thing. Rich people hated being used almost as much as poor people did. News broke fast. Someone had recorded the gala screen. The server dashboard screenshots spread like wildfire. Students from other schools messaged us, saying they'd seen weird comment overlays too. Parents demanded answers. Regulators sniffed blood. Dr. Heller resigned within 48 hours, claiming health reasons. Mr. Arkwright appeared on television, calm as ever, calling it a misunderstanding, promising an independent review. The feed, if it still existed somewhere, was silent. Finn cornered me outside the school gates 3 days later. He looked exhausted, hair messy in a way that was probably deliberate. "You ruined my life," he said flatly. I studied him. Without the golden spotlight of the feed, he looked like what he was, a boy taught to perform. "No," I said. "I ruined your script. Your life is whatever you decide to do without applause." Finn's eyes flashed. "You think you're so righteous," he sneered. "But you're still rich. You'll land on your feet." "Probably," I admitted, "but I'm not doing this to be punished. I'm doing it to stop them from punishing others." Finn's lips curled. "Mira," he spat. "She's the one you saved. Do you even know her? Or did you just like playing hero for once?" I felt anger flare. "Mira is not a prop," I said sharply. "And neither am I." Finn laughed, bitter. "You think people will cheer you now? They won't. They'll get bored. They always do." I stepped closer until Finn had to tilt his head back slightly. "Then let them," I said quietly. "I'm not living for their entertainment." Finn's gaze searched mine, as if looking for the feed to tell him what to say next. There was nothing. He looked lost. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Then he whispered, voice raw, "Do you know what my father told me when I was 10? I said nothing. Finn swallowed. He said, "If you can't be loved, be watched. Being watched lasts longer." His voice cracked on the last word. I held his gaze. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Finn flinched as if the apology was an insult. He turned and walked away. Mira found me later in the courtyard, hugging her coat around her like armor. Her eyes were clearer than they'd been in weeks. "People are messaging me," she said, voice shaky. "They're saying I'm brave. They're asking me to speak on a panel. I don't know how to do any of this." I smiled gently. "You don't have to," I said. "You can say no." Mira blinked. "I can?" "Yes," I said. "That's the whole point." She laughed, a small, startled sound. "I keep waiting for the next scene," she admitted, "like something bad will happen if I don't follow it." I touched her shoulder. "That feeling will fade," I said. "But you have to practice choosing anyway." Mira's lips trembled. "And what about you?" she asked. "What do you choose?" I looked toward the back row of students crossing the quad. Jay was there, hands in his pockets, watching the sky like it contained answers. "I choose not to be anyone's punishment," I said. Mira nodded slowly. "Then, can I choose something too?" she asked. "Like, being your friend?" My chest tightened. In the old story, Mira and I could only exist as rivals. The machine would never have written friendship. "Yes," I said softly, "you can." In the weeks that followed, Caledon changed in ways small and seismic. The AR initiative was suspended. The school's board held emergency meetings. Students whispered about lawsuits and settlements, and donors pulling funding. Some teachers looked at me with new respect. Others looked away, afraid of what I represented. Unpredictability. Jay kept a low profile, but rumors swirled. Some students claimed he was a hacker mastermind. Some claimed he was a plant. The truth was quieter. He was a boy who had been exploited and decided to bite back. One afternoon, I found him in the library, alone, reading a book on systems ethics. "You disappeared after the gala," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. Jay looked up, eyes tired. "I was avoiding being expelled," he said dryly. I smiled. "Did it work?" "So far," he said. He hesitated, then added, "Your parents filed. Mine can't. They'd bury us in legal fees. I leaned forward. Then we don't let them, I said. We make sure the case includes everyone. Jay's gaze sharpened. You do that? Yes, I said. Because I'm tired of only rich people getting justice. Jay's expression softened by a fraction. Alara, he said quietly, why are you really doing this? I breathed in, held it, let it out. Because the feed made me see something, I said. It made me see how easily we accept suffering as entertainment, and it made me see how much of my life has been arranged. Jay studied me. And what do you want that isn't arranged? He asked. The question hit like a bell. For a moment, I didn't know. Then I thought of the quiet thrill I'd felt analyzing reputation economics. I thought of the satisfaction of reading the machine's code and understanding it. I thought of the power of taking a narrative and making it confess. I want to build systems that don't lie, I said. Jay's mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's ambitious, he said. Good, I said. I'm bored of small ambitions. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. No text floated in it. No invisible audience demanded a beat. Just the world, messy and real, waiting for choices. And for the first time, I believed that was enough. Graduation arrived like a verdict. Street, Caledon's courtyard filled with white chairs and bright flowers, as if decor could erase controversy. Parents hugged and cried. Teachers pretended the year had been normal. Cameras still hovered, but they were human cameras, now phones and news crews, not secret lenses feeding data to a script. The lawsuit was ongoing. Settlements were whispered about. Mr. Arkwright's company had paused several projects. Dr. Heller had vanished into consultancy. The Academy's board had promised reforms. Whether those reforms would last depended on attention spans, on money, on shame. Mira sat beside me in a cap and gown, her hands steadier than they used to be. I thought I would disappear, she whispered, that I'd be swallowed by the story. I leaned toward her. You're still here, I whispered back. That's the plot twist. Mira laughed softly. Across the aisle, Finn sat with his friends, posture stiff. He hadn't spoken to me since the gate. His gaze flicked to me once, and I saw something that wasn't hatred or charm, something raw and uncertain. I wondered if the absence of the feed had left him hollow, like a stage after the audience leaves. Jay stood with the scholarship group near the edge of the crowd. When his name was called for a special recognition in technology ethics, there was scattered applause, then more, then a swell. People loved redemption arcs, even when no one was forcing them. Jay accepted the certificate without smiling. When he returned to his seat, his eyes found mine for a brief moment. The headmaster gave a speech about values and growth. I let the words wash over me. Then, to my surprise, the headmaster called my name again. Alara Voss, he announced, voice formal, will address the class. A murmur ran through the crowd. My mother's hand tightened on my father's arm. Finn's head lifted sharply. Mira's gaze snapped up. Jay's gaze locked on me, questioning. I walked to the podium, cap tight on my head, gown heavy on my shoulders. The microphone was real, wired, not at the mercy of overlays. The sun warmed my face. I looked at the sea of people, students, parents, reporters, and felt a familiar pressure, the urge to perform. Somewhere deep, I half expected the feed to flare. It didn't. The silence was mine. I didn't plan to speak today, I began. A few nervous laughs. I went on, keeping my voice even. A lot of you know what happened this year. You saw screens you weren't supposed to see. You learned that someone tried to turn us into a show. I paused, letting the words settle. I'm not here to relive it, I said. I'm here to say something simple. No one is a side character in their own life. A hush fell. I saw Mira's eyes shine. I saw parents shift, uncomfortable, because discomfort meant responsibility. I saw Finn's hands clench. This year, I said, we learned that an audience can be weaponized, that algorithms can be trained on our pain, that people can sell stories about us and call it innovation. My voice tightened for a second, and I forced it steady. But we also learned that scripts can be broken, not by being perfect, not by being lovable, by being willing to choose, even when the choice makes you unpopular. I breathed in. So here's my wish for all of us. Choose what you want when no one is clapping. Choose kindness that isn't performative. Choose ambition that doesn't require someone else's humiliation. Choose friends who see you when you're not interesting. I glanced toward Mira, toward Jay, and then, unexpectedly, toward Finn. Finn's eyes met mine, and for a second I thought I saw relief like someone hearing a language they'd forgotten. The world will always try to cast you, I finished. Let it try, and then walk off its stage. Applause rose, hesitant at first, then stronger. Some people clapped because they believed me. Some clapped because they wanted to look like they believed. I couldn't control that. I stepped away from the podium anyway. After the ceremony, as students spilled into the courtyard for photos, Mira grabbed my hand. I got accepted, she blurted, cheeks flushed. State University. Full ride. I'm going to study psychology. I squeezed her fingers. I'm proud of you, I said. She laughed, breathless. And you? She demanded. I hesitated, then pulled an envelope from my gown pocket. I got accepted too, I said. Not to the place my parents wanted. Mira's eyes widened. Where? I smiled. A real smile that didn't feel like armor. Northbridge Institute, I said. Systems, Design, and Ethics, Mira squealed, then covered her mouth. That's Alara. That's perfect. It's mine, I corrected gently. That's why it matters. Later, when the sun dipped and parents began to leave, I found Jay by the lake. The water reflected the sky in rippling fragments. Jay held a folded piece of paper in his hand, turning it slowly. You're leaving, he said, not a question. I nodded. You too, I said. He lifted the paper. Community college, he said, voice flat, as if daring me to judge. Part-time. I need to work. I stepped closer. That doesn't make you smaller, I said. Jay's eyes lifted, sharp. Most people think it does. Most people think a lot of stupid things, I replied. Jay's mouth twitched. True, he admitted. He hesitated, then said quietly, I'm sorry. I blinked. For what? For building part of it, he said. For helping them make the feed. I watched the lake for a moment. You were a kid, I said. They exploited you. Jay's jaw clenched. Still, he said, I keep thinking, if I hadn't written that code, maybe none of this. I stepped closer and tapped his chest lightly with one finger, right over his heart. If you hadn't written that code, I said, we wouldn't have had a back door. We wouldn't have had evidence. We wouldn't have had the chance to burn it down. Jay's breath caught. He stared at my finger, then at my face. You make it sound easy, he murmured. It's not easy, I said. It's just chosen. Jay looked away, toward the darkening campus. Finn's leaving too, he said suddenly. His father pulled him out. Private tutors. Damage control. Good, I said. Maybe he'll learn who he is without an audience. Jay's gaze returned to mine. And who are you? He asked, voice soft. Without one? I thought of the feed's absence like an empty space in my vision. I thought of the fear, the anger, the thrill of rebellion. I thought of the quiet afternoons with Mira in the library, of the nights Jay and I sifted through logs like archaeologists of cruelty. I'm still learning, I said. Jay nodded slowly. Me too, he said. He hesitated, then offered his hand formal, almost awkward. I looked at it, then took it. His palm was warm, calloused at the edges. See you in the real world, he said. I squeezed once. We're already in it, I replied. Jay's mouth curved, small and genuine. For a moment, there were no scripts, no overlays, no roles, just two people standing by a lake, holding on to something fragile and stubborn, the idea that a life could be lived without being sold.